The morning sunlight filtered through the kitchen window of the Miller household, casting a warm glow over the breakfast table where the clatter of ceramic and the rustle of cereal boxes provided the soundtrack to a new day. Tina, the youngest member of the family, stood on her tiptoes with a look of intense concentration as she carefully poured colorful loops of cereal into two separate bowls. Her mother, Judy, watched with a mixture of curiosity and maternal warmth, but it was Lauren, the older sister, who broke the silence with a sharp, cynical observation. Lauren leaned against the counter, crossing her arms as she asked why Tina was pouring two bowls of cereal when there was clearly only one child standing there. Tina did not look up from her task as she simply replied that one bowl was for Tracy. Lauren let out a weary sigh, rolling her eyes toward the ceiling as she explained to their mother that Tracy was nothing more than a stupid imaginary friend the little loser had made up just so she would have someone to talk to. The air in the room seemed to chill for a fraction of a second when Tina, with a voice that sounded far older and more ominous than a child of her age should possess, whispered that Tracy did not like that kind of talk at all. She repeated the phrase with a haunting emphasis, leaving a brief silence in the kitchen that was broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. Judy, ever the voice of reason and psychological grounding, tried to de-escalate the tension by suggesting that what Tina was doing was perfectly normal for her age. She looked at Lauren, explaining that the child was simply trying to fill a void in her life. Judy even confessed that when she was little, she had an imaginary friend as well. Lauren, never one to miss an opportunity for a sarcastic jab, shot back by asking if that was as opposed to all the real friends Judy had now. The banter was typical for the Miller family, a mixture of biting wit and underlying affection. Judy sighed, wondering aloud why she even bothered to subject herself to such abuse in her own home. She stood up to check on the laundry, but before she left the room, she offered to pour some more milk for Tina and her little friend. In that moment, a sudden splash occurred, and the milk carton seemed to slip. Tina immediately gasped, scolding Tracy for being mean. Lauren, skeptical as ever, pointed out that it was not an imaginary friend but rather a loose cap on the milk carton that caused the mess. Tina, however, remained steadfast in her belief, telling her sister that whatever helped her sleep at night was fine with her. The conversation shifted as Bill Miller entered the room, his mind clearly occupied by the pressures of his professional life at Berentson's, the local department store. Bill was a man of simple pleasures and a peculiar talent for flipping cars, a skill he practiced with a toy model on the table. He was currently trying to tie a record long believed to be unbreakable. He announced to anyone who would listen that he had just successfully flipped his 77th consecutive car. His friend and colleague, Fitz, watched with bated breath, noting the intense pressure on Miller with an 8-year record on the line. When Fitz asked who held the record, Bill replied with a grin that it was none other than himself. The domestic scene was interrupted by the reality of their workplace. At Berentson's, the atmosphere was often sluggish until the arrival of the new management. A young man named Maxwell McDaniel had been standing at the counter for 5 minutes without being noticed, a fact he was quick to point out. He was met with the dry humor of the staff, who joked about his appearance until he revealed that he had learned at Harvard Business School that a customer approached within the first 30 seconds is 80% more likely to make a purchase. This college boy, as they called him, was soon revealed to be Seth Casella, the new department manager starting that very day. Seth was young, ambitious, and perhaps a bit too confident in his Ivy League education. He introduced himself to the team while they were in the middle of a rather unorthodox demonstration of the supercapacity Megatank 3000, a toilet they claimed could handle a deck and a half of cards in one flush. Seth was not impressed, noting that such information would only be useful if cards ever started dropping out of his own backside. Despite his rocky start with the veterans like Bill and Fitz, Seth was determined to bring a new level of customer service to the store. He even mistook Maxwell McDaniel for an exemplary employee before realizing the man was actually a customer. The tension between the old guard and the new management began to simmer immediately. Bill could not stand taking orders from a spoiled kid who had never sold a single item in his life. Back at the Miller home, the mystery of Tracy continued to grow. Tina's behavior became increasingly eccentric, leading Judy to suggest that Bill invite Seth over for a poker night to smooth things over. Bill was hesitant, fearing that his true feelings about his boss might slip out after a few beers, but Judy insisted that making Seth feel welcome might lead to a better working environment. The poker night arrived, and the atmosphere was thick with the scent of Judy's famous six-layer dip. Seth, trying to be one of the guys, joined Bill, Fitz, and the others at the card table. He spoke about his time at college and how hanging out with simple people was a relaxing change of pace. The term simple people did not sit well with the group, especially Bill, who felt the sting of the young man's condescension. However, the night took an unexpected turn when Bill's son, Brian, arrived home from a Model United Nations meeting. Seth and Brian immediately bonded over their shared love for a video game called Dragon Boss. Seth, the Harvard graduate, found common ground with the teenager, leaving the older men feeling even more alienated in their own home. As the weeks passed, the relationship between Seth and the Miller family became more complicated. Bill began to take advantage of Seth's friendship with Brian, using it to secure perks at work, such as longer lunch hours and lighter shifts. Fitz was disgusted by the blatant favoritism, accusing Bill of using his own son to get ahead. Meanwhile, Judy became increasingly concerned about Seth's influence on Brian. The boy was staying out late on school nights to attend documentaries and play games with his new adult friend. When Brian finally pushed the boundaries too far, Judy put her foot down, grounding her son and banning him from seeing Seth. This decision had immediate repercussions at Berenson's. Seth, feeling slighted by the loss of his only friend in town, began to take his frustrations out on Bill. The easy shifts disappeared, replaced by grueling inventory work and the dreaded toilet returns window. The conflict reached a breaking point during Porcelain Days, a massive sales event at the store. Bill was forced to work a grueling Saturday shift as punishment for his family's rejection of Seth. Judy, realizing the extent of the retaliation, decided to take matters into her own hands. She marched down to Berenson's, pushing through the crowds and the deflated giant gorilla in the parking lot to find the young manager. She confronted Seth in front of the entire store, calling him a jacknut for bullying a hard-working man just because he was a scared little boy himself. Her words were sharp and filled with the fierce protectiveness of a wife and mother. She told him that while everyone might call him sir or boss, they were all thinking the same thing. The confrontation left Seth shaken and the store in a stunned silence. In the end, the family gathered back at home, the storm having passed. Brian, having witnessed the exchange at the store, realized that his father's integrity was worth more than a cool jacket or a high-level video game character. He chose to stand by his family, even if it meant losing his connection to the Ivy League world Seth represented. Bill, surprisingly, was not fired, as Seth was too intimidated by Judy to take further action. Even Tina had moved on, announcing that Tracy was no longer her friend. When a relieved Judy asked if Tina had finally realized that imaginary friends were not real, the little girl simply replied that she had a new friend named Jeannie. The cycle of childhood mystery began anew, leaving the Millers to navigate the humorous, messy, and ultimately loving reality of their lives together. They understood that whether the friends were real or imagined, the bonds they held as a family were the only things that truly mattered in the long run. The house was filled once again with the sounds of laughter and the gentle bickering that defined their home, a testament to the enduring power of simple people living their complicated lives with heart and humor.